Well, hello, I'm Dawn Baggett and I'm from Alabama. I am an adoptive mom. I have older biological kids and then our younger kids who are all also almost grown now, or grown or almost grown. My youngest is 17. The four younger are adopted from Russia. And so I'm still pro adoption. But after all these years and all the struggles we've had, I think people really need to know what they're getting in for in some cases. I don't think, and I know that child to parent violence, or however you want to say that, is not, not there in every single case with every single child, but it is a really real possibility for adopting kids. And that's something that I really wasn't as aware of then years ago as I am now, having gone through it ourselves. Um, with with one of my children, the violence got pretty bad, um, against me primarily, not so much against the other kids, although there was a little of that as well, a little aggression. I say a little. There was a significant amount of aggression with other siblings, but the actual violence was more toward me, mom, and I learned the term nurturing enemy. That was a revelation to me, to understand that I am the trigger, not necessarily what I do, but just me being in the role of mom, uh, ended up being a trigger for my kids' aggressive and violent behavior. And that's all apparently part of the whole mental health and developmental trauma that not just the one, but more than one went through. Um, Not every one of them has been violent. Uh, One of them was pretty significantly violent, so much so that uh, I had already arranged to have her taken, moved away from the house and going into a boarding school. This was after a stint in residential treatment, a behavioral treatment center. And the day after she got home from that residential treatment center, I ended up having to call the police because of her behavior being so violent again, just the very next day. So it's not like it cured anything, or, made her better, or anything like that. But it was a significant break for us to kind of regroup while she was out of the house during that period. Well, then after that, we talked, my husband and I had arranged to uh, jump through hoops and jump through hurdles and get her into this boarding school situation. And I find that many other families, I didn't know that so much then, but I do now as a adoptive mom coach, parent coach, that many families fall into this, what I call the gap, where there's just not the support that you expect to be there in all the standard places that you would tend to look for support. And so you find yourself looking, just for safety, for out of home placements for your violent and aggressive children, not because you don't love them, not because you don't want them, in your life, but because it's just not safe, especially if you have other children in the home, which of course we did. And so that was something that I had arranged for. But then, we were doing things a little bit different. We had learned some more ways to, and I particularly had, being the nurturing enemy, had learned some ways to interact and not interact that wouldn't set her off. And things calmed down a little bit, and her dad wanted to just she talked him into letting her stay at the high school with her friends, who were kind of part of the problem. I saw it back then, um, but really it wasn't ideal. And she ended up, long story short, going into foster care, where she is continuing to finish up as she's aged out of foster care, except for now that she has gotten to be an adult age, she is uh, using the resources from foster care to do her education. So in the long run, it has been beneficial for her to get out of the house, get away from the tension and having a close relationship, a close mom relationship and parent and family relationships, and grow and mature and get to an adult age. And she's doing pretty well now. But I have a younger one, and we did another younger son who had a lot of the same behaviors, although it wasn't necessarily exactly the same. And he tended to not be as extreme and as prolonged in his episodes, I guess you would call it. And I also learned to step back more, let my husband take the lead more, and he learned how to do that in a way that was would work better. And so even though we had some issues with his behavior being aggressive, it was different. He's a different person. Different people have different, different drivers of that kind of behavior. And also, we had learned and researched and gone through a lot already. And so we did things different with him. And so we're thankfully through that season of life. But during that season of life, it was so hard because whoever expects their child to turn around and punch them in the face, break their glasses, pull them down the hallway by their hair. Um, I remember I had my hair had been a lot of it pulled out, and I remember noticing my hair was about down to here, and I noticed that there was some new growth about a year and a half later that came down to here when the hair that she pulled out of my head was growing back. And just you're walking around with bruises and nobody's doing anything. And so it was a revelation, I guess, God thing for me to finally um, realize that I had PTSD. And I had gone to a counselor, and really to get help for my son, my younger son, and his behaviors. And he's deaf, and he had some deaf related behaviors just because of the frustration with communication. And so he ended up helping me work through my PTSD, which I didn't even know I had. And so when I realized that I had PTSD from just all this buildup of and it hadn't even got to the worst yet, but thankfully I had that counselor while we were going through some of that difficult time. And the PTSD was something that I also learned a lot of moms develop, a lot of adoptive moms develop, a lot of special needs moms develop. My counselor's wife had PTSD. I think he said in any event they had a special needs child who ended up breaking his wife's jaw, and that was a wake up call for him. And so he could really relate to what I was going through based on what he had gone through in his own family. And so I did, it was a learning journey, a huge learning journey for me in dealing with the violence and the aggression um, from my own child who I loved and wanted to have in my life, and wanted to have a close relationship with. And yet the close relationship was severely hindered by me being the nurturing enemy. And so that was difficult, but I wrapped my brain around that, and we continued on. It was very difficult season, very difficult because people didn't understand, and I was shy, I guess you would say, about sharing it with people because at that point, I didn't know how to trust. Like I said, I had this PTSD, and I was very hyper vigilant, feeling like, somebody was going to come up behind me in my own house and, stab me or something. We found a knife in her room. It was a fishing knife that my husband had. I didn't even know he had it. It was outside in the big ton truck that we never used. And I think he said he had it in the glove compartment probably for years and I didn't even know it was out there. And I had in the meantime, I had locked up all of our sharps. And that's another thing you learn, to lock up things like, your kitchen knives and your scissors and the things that could be used to hurt someone with, or to do self-harm. And that's another part of the picture, is the self-harm. And so I'd locked up all the sharps. I'd done all that due diligence, and ended up she had like a 4-inch knife in her room that I found. So the fear of being not only you hurt, but somebody else hurt, one of your children hurt. And I was always playing, intervention, trying to make sure that no one else was getting hurt and putting myself in harm's way in the meantime. And that was emotionally, draining. So it really does a number on you, on your nervous system. and that hypervigilance that many of our kids come to us, and they have that because they have PTSD or complex PTSD from their own early childhood traumas. And I really, on the one hand, as bad as it was, I really believe it was a gift from God for me to see a taste and experience that little snippet of what my children went through, some of them when they were younger, before they came into my home, when they were not adults who had some kind of a foundation of not that I understood it, but foundation of just understanding in general about people and the way the world works and how to deal with things, and a faith foundation in God, that they were little kids. They didn't have any control. They were just at the mercy of whoever their caretakers were and whoever was around them. And so, knowing how devastating it was for me as an adult to go through that little snippet, um, and I don't want to minimize it because it was awful and it was an extended period of time, but it was nothing to what my children, some of them, had gone through um, when they were babies, when they were little. And so, I do, now that I have had time to process and time to work through my own PTSD, I do believe it was a gift to be able to have that insight into their world and into this type of uh, trauma from close relationships, close family relationships. And so, long story short, she has been out of the home. We had no contact for a while, not because of our doing, but the judge ruled it, and she ended up contacting me when that was closing down, and we ended up rebuilding our relationship. And she's doing well. And then, like I said, my younger son, who had the aggression and the violence tendencies as well, is doing well. And we're rocking on pretty well, but there's still these rifts in our history of our family that have not been repaired. um, Biological kids, there's one of my biological kids that I don't have a communication, I don't have a relationship with anymore, because she was young when all this was happening, and her perception of things was different than what the way I remember things. And she'd gone to some psychologist that told her if she was having bad dreams, she must have been abused. So now she thinks she was abused. There's another one of our adopted children who she just, maybe she wasn't really violent so much, but she was aggressive, and she's been very aggressive in her things she would say and her accusations and things like that. And so there's just been a lot of hurt and a lot of pain over the years, that in addition to the actual violence, which was mostly against me, there's been a lot of other tension and heartbreak and hurt that needed to be repaired. And repair can take a long time, and repair takes two willing people, to repair that relationship. And so I just, if I had to say anything to you, if you're going through this, I would say safety first. Your safety matters just as much as anybody else's. And so if you're the mom, how can you take care of your family if you're not safe? So you need to be safe as well. And then sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. So when you're in the middle of it, you may be like me, you may not even know, that how bad it really has gotten, because it's kind of a slippery slope, and you're looking out for the kids, for the family, and you're not really mainly looking out for yourself. And who else is looking out for you? Who else even realizes what all you're going through? And so you might need somebody to help you maybe develop a safety plan and get that perspective that you don't really have, because you can't see the forest for the trees. So safety is, you can't really do anything else. You can't have growth and learning and repair and all of that until you feel safe. And your children that are having violence and aggression tendencies, maybe they don't feel safe, not because of anything you've done, but because they're being triggered because of their own trauma background and developmental trauma history that they have, like mine have had. So that's my story. I don't have a lot more to say about it, because I'm trying to honor my children and honor their privacy while also at the same time honoring myself and my own story, which I want to share to help others. And that's something that I've come around to doing through post adoption coaching. And that's something that this kind of the way I pay it forward is to help other mothers going through similar situations and help you see the forest for the trees. So that's all I have today. Thanks for this opportunity to join in the project. I appreciate it. Bye, y'all.
I'm Katie Rose. I'm the founder and president of Attached Families Inc. I am a mother of two beautiful boys that I adopted from foster care who, due to their own demons, issues, they spent 10 years um, being violent in some way. Most people talk about domestic violence and they don't include the fact that there is child to parent violence. And it happens every day in America to thousands and thousands of families who are ashamed or blamed or isolating themselves because they don't know what else to do. Most families who reach out for help and ask for help are somehow hurt in that process. They become blamed or threatened that they'll lose their other children simply for speaking out and looking for help. It is my hope that while connecting and partnering and collaborating with these amazing other organizations, that we can bring awareness to society that this is happening and something needs to change. It is no longer okay to say that the systems are broken and go on with our day. We must do something to fix it.